One of the topics that came up here at the IR Magazine Conference and Awards 2012 in Singapore was the issue of trust. The head of listings at the Singapore Exchange was saying that without trust, there is no investment. Let's put that to Tim Craighead, who is in the research field at Bloomberg. In fact, you're the head of the research team. Can you tell us a little bit more about how much you trust companies listed on exchanges?
Well, it is a fascinating topic. As I think you know, Bloomberg is all about data, but the IR investment process between IR and buy side and sell side not only is about data, but it is about relationships. And you've got to be able to build credible relationships that does indeed circle into trust before, in the end, a portfolio manager is willing to make that decision to buy that stock.
So they're not going to look at the data unless they trust the company, you're saying?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. It may start with the data because something screens well. It may start with a relationship because you met somebody at a conference. It circles around both, but without the trust, it's for naught.
So give the companies generally, the ones that you cover in the gaming sector perhaps in particular, a score out of 10. How much do you trust them?
It's an interesting business because I would say a high level. It's a highly regulated business. The data is there. All the companies tend to provide a lot of disclosure. Sands China would be an example, and Las Vegas Sands as a parent. Very detailed, granular data, and then willing to have access and conversations with sell-side and investors helps to really drive that forward.
Let me maybe flip the question around and ask you where they could improve on building the trust. What more could they do? Companies generally, perhaps, on building trust.
Right. Well, I think a big issue is responsiveness. And I think that's true in all walks of life.
You mean answering phone calls and replying to emails?
Exactly. I mean, it's the simple little things like that. I mean, you put in place your disclosure, you're working with management, what you're willing to talk about. But in the end, when it comes back to a people business, that responsiveness is a key issue. If you have that, plus the disclosure, plus the understanding of what's really driving the industry and your companies and your competitors, and wrap all of that together, you've got a full package. We like to think that's what we focus on at Bloomberg, but clearly I think it plays through to every company and how they deal with their investor base.
Finally then, when you look at the Bloomberg terminal, do you need to meet management directly and talk to them on the phone or through email in order to build that trust? Or are you actually able to get a sense of trust by looking at the screens?
It's a fascinating question, and I think you can. And it goes back to what information companies are willing to provide. The way that we build Bloomberg Industries is detailed peer comparative analytics, metric by metric, and you can see which companies are willing to disclose, which companies aren't. And that does help build essentially a foundation and understanding before you ever then connect with a company.
I'm going to put you on the spot here and going to ask you to show us how that works on a terminal. Yeah. Can we just walk over?
Of course.
Right. Let's use this one here.
So if I go into Bloomberg Industries by typing BI on the terminal, I'm going to go and pick on my own industry, going into consumer discretionary, going into casinos.
Okay.
And here, if I go into the data library and specifically the company section, wireless connections here, I think, are taking a little long to come through. And I go into, I'll pick lastly on Macau with this tab. What I can go through and look at, if I wanted to look at the VIP versus mass market business, this will give you a sense of some of the disclosure that companies are willing to provide. What is casino table drop? And I can see the key 6 companies that are here. I can look at the win for VIP versus mass market. This is pretty granular, detailed data that I can go through and look at even the individual casino and do a peer-to-peer comparative analysis of size, of growth rates, of other types of metrics like this. It's pretty fascinating. And to have this finger on the tips to then be able to have a conversation with a company, or for a company to understand how they're situated within their industry versus their peers, I think is pretty powerful.
But also fair to say the fact that the companies even disclose this information might be one of those trust builders, is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you for showing that to us. Tim Craighead from Bloomberg here at the IR Magazine Conference and Awards 2012. Have a look at these products.